This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial, and if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. I finally got my hands on Panasonic's $999 dust splash and freeze resistant LUMIX S100 2.8 macro only yesterday, which is to say not in time to shoot with it in the real world before embargo lift for our primary use cases, our personal work, classic street portrait, and urban landscape. Barely enough time to shoot with it for a secondary use case of ours, product shots here on the channel, and a couple of tertiary use cases of ours, including A, near minimum focusing distance, eyeball peeling, stupid high magnification comparison testing, which I do under protest because while it is repeatable and useful for evaluating flaring and chromatic aberration, it is absolute drudge work for me and useful for little else in the real world, especially when lens designers usually optimize for infinity rather than minimum focusing distances. Yeah, and other people do these kinds of tests better than I anyway. Which, in any case, are not real life, except for macro work. And B, focus breathing tests, because although irrelevant for what we do, it can matter for the video shooters among us actually doing manual focus pulls. And, as it turns out, the macro shooters among us who go so far as to focus stack their images and blend them in post. Hold that thought. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and I will be as brief as I can because in spite of the fact that, yeah, I'm going to whine about it again, I gave myself a too aggressive time frame, exacerbated by weather that was less all moody and ooh opportunity than just plain cold, wet, and I do understand what it is I'm seeing in this new lens, and it's got me thinking big time. 1. This is an uber modern lens, and it is an ambitious lens for Panasonic. A. Even though it's the longest and slowest prime in the S series, it is encased in the same housing as all of its f1.8 siblings, which really is quite a feat in and of itself, reminding me of nothing so much as smaller, lighter Nikon 1.8S primes, which is to say, light and absolutely streamlined, as in no aperture ring, no gratuitous function buttons, no lens IS, because, hey, this is a short telephoto, and Panasonic has great IBIS in all their cameras, thank you very much. B. Panasonic's engineers have chosen to use a higher than, let's call it, usual number of special lens elements in its optical design. And contrary to current thinking, that design is simpler than most. See, they've also developed, and this is the very first lens to use it, a brand new and very compact, what they call dual phase linear focus motor system. 2. This is the smallest and lightest short telephoto, true one-to-one maximum magnification macro I have ever had in hand by far, and this is huge. It fundamentally changes the balance and handling of whatever camera to which it is mounted. Attached to Panasonic's S1R or my own SL2, it turns a heavy camera into an easy camera to shoot. This is profound, and this is what has me thinking the hardest. 3. Real-world performance as a macro lens? Holy not only is it the smallest and lightest, you'll hear me say this again and again, but it does the business as well as the best macros I've ever had in hand. I mean, look at this. I shot with it attached to a 47.5 megapixel S1R using its autofocus stacking function and then blending the shots in Photoshop. Super easy. There was, to my eye, virtually no focus breathing before I imported those 21 images into Photoshop to blend them. Although, geez, After seeing my Jaeger LeCoultre Duo Reverso up close with this much detail, I mean, I've been wearing either an Apple Watch or a Garmin for years now, I think this lens is going to cost me whether I buy one or not. You can tell I use the Reverso as a daily driver for a long time, so I don't mind the scratches, but the rust? There's rust on this? I have to have someone look at that. What about as a more general purpose lens, say for portrait, landscape, or of course one of my favorites, urban landscape? Yeah, but I'm not going to lie. Pixel peeping images of my own face taken with this lens on the S1R revealed to me far more than I wanted to know about the dominance of my Wolfman genes, my nasal cavities, and the limitations of both my eyesight and a fresh 5-bladed manual razor. But with this said, the fall off in the out of focus areas of the frame was beautiful, and this has me thinking too. I couldn't say this about the last short telemacro I owned. Hold that thought. 4. Let's talk about the competition, beginning with like-for-like short telemacros. I'll start with a more detailed comparison of weight and size, and prepare to be surprised. A. The Lumix is 50% lighter and 13% smaller than Sony's FE92.8 GOSS, and this is a big deal. B. It's 58% lighter, if just 1% smaller, than the Sigma 105 2.8, and this is a big deal. C. It's between 40% and 58% lighter, 18 and 25% smaller than Canon's RF 100 2.8L Macro IS USM and Nikon's Nikkor Z MC 105 2.8 VRS. Holy cow. D. The S100 2.8 accomplishes this with the same 9 aperture blades and maximum 1-to-1 magnification of all but the Canon actually, which, although also having 9 aperture blades, can reach 1.4-to-1 magnification. Yay, Canon. E. On the other hand, the Lumix does not have the lens image stabilization of the Sony, Nikon, or Canon. And F, as I mentioned earlier, but now I'll be more specific, its 13-element, 11-group optical design is less complex than the Sony, Nikon, and Canon. More complex than the Sigma, actually, but the Lumix incorporates a greater number of special elements than any of them. 3S spherical this, 2 UED that, 1 ED, blah, 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 blah. G. Claudia gave Sigma's 105 2.8 DGDN art a go a while back and found out while it offered super image quality and super build quality, both were blunted for her primary use case, again, personal street work, by its relative weight, bulk, and most importantly for her, because she is an Amazon, autofocus simply too slow and uncertain for non-macro work. H. I actually bought Sony's FE92.8 GOSS macro years ago with my own hard cash when it first came out, but to my utter astonishment, I quickly sold it. The only lens I've ever had where I felt it was too sharp for one of its primary use cases for me. Great for product photography, of course, but like Claudia, out on the street, where I hoped I could substitute it for bigger, heavier, and lower resolution 70-200, background rendering just looked wrong. Ugly. I haven't had the Nikon Z or Canon RF equivalents in hand, so I can't say much about them other than that in an imperfect comparison of MTF charts. Never mind that they all do it differently. Almost no manufacturer is doing them properly or consistently well these days. Don't get me started. Each lens has its strengths and weaknesses. But none of them looked remotely like the MTF chart of what I regard as, having used it before, the reference standard at the focal length, non-macro though it is, Leicas Apo Summicron SL90mm f2. So K, and I think I can now step away from all of the anal retentive outlining. It's getting a bit long. Let's talk a bit more about non-macro short tellies, because this is where it gets really interesting to my way of thinking, never mind MTF charts. After shooting enough images late yesterday afternoon of one of our bookcases in the living room to make me want to put a fork in my eye, not only with the S100 2.8, Panasonic's own 85 1.8, an excellent lens out in the real world, Sigma's diminutive 92.8 DGDN I series, which I own and love for street work, Sigma's much larger and heavier, but much faster 85 1.4 DGDN art, which I also own and love, but have come to realize I use only very occasionally for portraiture of a very specific type at this point. Voigtlander's manual focus only jewel-like aposcope R92.8 that I bought to replace actually my Elmert M92.8, which I loved for years and now love this one as well. Even my XCD90V, a 70mm full-frame field of view equivalent, made it to my 102 megapixel Hasselblad X2D. No, I don't yet own the reference standard Apo Summicron SL90 F2, so I couldn't test that. What I can do is tell you that A, so much for giving up my anal retentive tendencies, they are all far closer in optical performance at near minimum focusing distance than one might assume, typically more gated by focus precision, manual or autofocus, than anything else. When they aren't, among all the gear I own, the Hassie kit does come out on top, although for $12.5 it ought to. B, they all exhibit some amount of chromatic aberration, although among the autofocus lenses, yeah, the S100 2.8 narrowly comes out on top at f2.8. See, the Aposcope comes out best among all full-frame lenses for chromatic aberration performance wide open when I nailed manual focus. D, even though my focus was pretty good, it was not, under high magnification, quite as good as the autofocus on the S1R combined with the S100. And this is something I've been grappling with for a while now, namely that my eyes ain't what they used to be. And for people like me, great autofocus can often yield superior imagery with merely very good to excellent lenses compared to pinnacle lenses focused either manually or by autofocus systems, which occasionally miss. Which brings us to this as I wrap it up. Full-frame lenses have improved significantly, even over the last 5 years, while often getting smaller. I think it's fair to say that the S100 2.8 is an exemplar of this trend. Full-frame camera bodies have improved significantly over the last 5 years as well, with really radically improved autofocus and significantly better IBIS. I think the S5 II series is an exemplar of this trend, allowing me, in fact, without thinking about it, grabbing this shot at just 1/5 of a second handheld, a full 4-stop improvement over the old reciprocal rule. The net of it is that what Panasonic's engineers have done with the S100 2.8 macro is to define and successfully, I think, execute a set of image quality, functional, and operational trade-offs different from what I've seen in the rest of the industry for this segment, resulting in a lens that is a more usable and accessibly priced general purpose lens as well as a kick-ass macro. Razor sharp where it needs to be, pleasingly sharp, maybe still it's a little too sharp for portraits, and easily malleable in post when it needs to be, with beautiful fall off into out of focus areas, with now in 2024 no autofocus performance penalty. This is a combination neither purpose-built macros nor purpose-built portrait lenses can quite match. Although, yeah, I'd agree, retouching or applying AI to any portrait of me with this lens is just about de rigueur. But the real kicker is that they've been able to cram all of this into a small and very light body. I know I'm repeating myself, but clearly this is what really struck me most, that profoundly changes the handling dynamics of the camera to which it is attached in a good way. Taken together, this makes it a better choice, I suspect, for many L-mount shooters, as it will almost inevitably be used more often, making it, in essence, a higher ROI purchase than either type of dedicated lens for, say, wedding photographers, photojournalists, street photographers, travel photographers, some sports photographers, videographers, really anyone who wants or needs that flexibility, portability, and ready for crap weather, splash, dust, and freeze resistance. Accessibly priced. Do I wish the S100 2.8 macro had even better chromatic aberration performance wide open? A year ago, I would have said absolutely. But now I'm willing to trade that away for the lens's strengths. Fact is, I stop down for product work anyway, and I usually do that for street portraits too. not only to get the person sharp from tip of nose to back of ears, but to retain a sense of the urban landscape in which I operate. In the end, really, making it a non-issue for what I do the way I do it. Will I be able to crop the crap out of this lens quite the same way I can with the Apo-Summicron when I'm using it the way I do for urban landscape? No, but stopped down, I can get close enough that the size, weight, and price advantages of the S100 2.8 have me thinking so hard that I smell smoke. The Apo-Summicron SL90 is more than double the weight and almost 6 times the price of the 100, which in turn is closer to my favorite portrait focal length anyway, which is 135 millimeters. The very bottom line is that with an atypical optical design and a new dual-phase linear motor system, combined with the S5 II's excellent in-body image stabilization and hybrid phase detection autofocus, L-mount shooters now have a kit for the street or any other handheld genre, with a combined weight of just about a kilo, an outstanding balance of traits, including a schleppability quotient, about as good as it gets. And that, if you know me at all, is a really, 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 really big deal. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 6 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, join the conversation in the comment section below because this is an exceptional audience. If you'd like help with a portfolio review, gear selection, finding or honing your artistic voice, sign up for a one-on-one mentoring video call via Zoom at 3bmep.com/booking. Finally, please consider supporting our work by using the no-cost to you affiliate links down below, sending us coffee money via PayPal, or most especially, joining us on Patreon, links down below as well. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.